Imagine that it has finally happened. After years of training, years of preparation, and a journey through deep space that seemed to stretch on forever, you have arrived on Mars. The dream that humanity has carried for generations is no longer a dream. You are here. And now, on your very first morning, you slowly open your eyes. For a moment, there is confusion. You have that familiar feeling that comes with waking up in an unfamiliar place. The brief uncertainty before your mind remembers where you are. Then it comes back all at once. Mars, you are on Mars. You sit up in bed, expecting excitement to rush through you? Perhaps it does for a second. But another feeling quickly follows. Something strange. Something you never imagined while looking at artist impressions and mission posters back on Earth. The room feels small. Very small. The ceiling is only a few feet above you. The walls are smooth and artificial. Soft lights glow from hidden panels overhead. There are no windows, no sunlight pouring through a curtain. No glimpse of a red horizon stretching across an alien world. Just walls. Quiet mechanical hums surround you from every direction. Fans, air pumps, water recyclers, filtration systems. Machines that never sleep. Machines that cannot sleep. Because neither can the people responsible for keeping them alive. For the first time, you begin to understand something important. You are not really living on Mars. You are living inside a machine that happens to be sitting on Mars. Outside these walls lies an entire planet, a world of vast deserts, giant volcanoes, and ancient canyons. Yet none of it is accessible to you right now. The reality of your existence is measured not in kilometers, but in meters. The few rooms connected by narrow corridors are your entire universe. You swing your legs out of bed and place your feet on the floor. Even that feels different. Mars has only about 38% of Earth's gravity. You weigh less here, much less. Your body notices immediately. Every movement feels strangely light. Not enough to make you float, but enough to remind you that you are somewhere profoundly different. You make your way through the habitat. The lighting has been programmed to imitate a sunrise, but it is only an imitation. The real sunrise is happening somewhere above layers of protective shielding and thick habitat walls. You cannot see it. At least not from here. Most early Martian habitats would likely be buried beneath layers of rock and soil. Not because engineers enjoy building underground, but because the planet above is dangerous. The shielding protects against radiation from space. Without it, every day would slowly damage the cells of your body. So instead of waking beneath an open sky, you wake beneath a ceiling of engineered safety. A ceiling designed to keep you alive. You arrive at the small communal area. A few other settlers are already awake. Someone is checking environmental readings. Someone else is reviewing power levels from the previous night. Nobody seems rushed, yet everyone seems aware of something. The same invisible truth. Everything here depends on systems functioning exactly as intended. Back on Earth, you rarely think about air. You rarely think about water. You rarely think about warmth. They simply exist. The planet provides them freely. Mars provides none of them. Every breath you take has been manufactured. Every drop of water has been processed. Every degree of warmth inside the habitat has been generated by machines working continuously against the cold outside. The realization arrives slowly. This is not like moving to another country. It is not like moving to another continent. It is not even like moving to Antarctica. You have not relocated within nature. You have relocated outside of nature. The natural environment beyond these walls does not support life. It actively rejects it. And yet, despite all this, there is still wonder. You pause beside a small, reinforced observation port, one of the few windows in the habitat. Beyond the thick glass, the Martian landscape stretches into the distance. The sky is not blue. It carries a faint reddish haze. The ground is covered in dust that has not been touched by rain for billions of years. Far away, the horizon glows beneath a pale morning light. Beautiful, silent, ancient. For a few moments, you simply stare. Human beings spent centuries imagining this view. Entire generations live. A few days after arriving on Mars, your turn finally comes. Your first surface excursion. The moment every astronaut dreams about. The moment generations of scientists, engineers, and explorers imagined long before the first human ever reached this world. For days, you have watched the others leave through the airlock. Now it is your turn. The process begins long before you ever step outside. Unlike opening a front door on Earth, going outside on Mars is an operation, a checklist, a ritual, a careful sequence of procedures that cannot be rushed. You begin by putting on the suit, piece by piece, layer after layer, cooling systems, communications equipment, pressure seals, life support systems, emergency backups. By the time everything is secured, you are no longer simply wearing clothing. You are wearing a personal spacecraft. A machine designed to keep a fragile human body alive in an environment where it cannot survive for more than a few moments on its own. The suit feels bulky. The gloves are thick. Every movement requires slightly more effort than it should. You check your oxygen supply. Then you check it again. Everyone does. Even experienced astronauts. Because out there, forgetting something small can become a very big problem. The inner hatch closes behind you. For a moment, you are alone inside the airlock. The room feels smaller than before, quieter, more serious. A low mechanical sound fills the chamber as pressure begins to change. You wait. Nobody speaks. Everyone understands the importance of this moment. Eventually, a light appears. The outer hatch unlocks. Slowly, it opens, and for the first time in your life, you step onto another planet. The sight is breathtaking. Mars is beautiful. That is the first thing you notice. The landscape stretches endlessly in every direction. Rolling hills of rust-colored dust, ancient rock formations, shadows cast beneath a pale salmon-colored sky. Everything feels vast. Everything feels distant. Everything feels untouched. There are no roads, no cities, no forests, no oceans, no signs that life was ever here. Only silence. A silence so complete it almost feels unnatural. On Earth, even the quietest places are alive with sound. Wind through trees. Birds calling in the distance, insects moving through grass, the distant rumble of waves. Something is always happening. Mars is different. The world around you seems frozen, as if time itself has slowed. You pause for a moment to absorb it, and then you notice something strange. You cannot actually feel Mars. Not really. The landscape is right there, only a few steps away, but your skin never touches the air. Your hands never touch the soil. You cannot smell anything. You cannot feel the wind. You cannot hear the desert around you. Everything reaches you through layers of technology. The suit filters your experience. The visor filters your vision. The communication system filters every sound. You traveled millions of kilometers to reach this world, and yet there is still a barrier between you and it. That realization grows stronger as the day continues. Because Mars is not simply dangerous. It is fundamentally incompatible with human life. The atmosphere surrounding you is incredibly thin, so thin that calling it an atmosphere almost feels misleading. Back on Earth, the air above your head protects you. It holds warmth. It carries sound. It allows liquid water to exist. It shields you from much of the harsh radiation arriving from space. Mars does almost none of these things. If your suit suddenly disappeared, you would not slowly become uncomfortable. You would immediately find yourself in a life-threatening emergency. There would be no dramatic struggle, no heroic attempt to survive, only a very brief countdown measured in seconds. The planet would win instantly. This truth follows you everywhere. With every step, you become aware that your life depends entirely upon the integrity of the suit surrounding your body. The suit is your atmosphere. The suit is your warmth. The suit is your pressure. The suit is your survival. Without it, Mars reminds you exactly where you are. Not on a second Earth, not on a future paradise, but on a world that was never meant for creatures like us. As you continue walking, another realization emerges. The photographs were lying, not intentionally, but they never captured the scale, the emptiness, the loneliness. The horizon seems impossibly far away. There is nothing moving, nothing growing, nothing living. On Earth, even the most remote desert contains signs of life, tiny plants, hidden insects, migrating birds, some reminder that biology has found a way. Here, there is none. You are standing in a place where evolution never built a home for large living things. And perhaps that is what makes Mars feel so different. Not its color, not its mountains, not its sky, but the absence of life. You begin to understand why astronauts often describe Earth as feeling alive when viewed from space. Clouds move, oceans shimmer, weather systems swirl, the planet breathes. Mars does not seem to breathe, it simply exists. Ancient, silent, unchanging. Hours pass faster than expected. Eventually, the reminder appears on your display. Oxygen reserves, battery levels, return timeline. Every excursion has limits. No matter how beautiful the landscape may be, the clock is always running. The suit carries only so much air, only so much power, only so much time. So you turn around and begin walking back toward the habitat. The structure appears small against the enormous landscape. A tiny artificial bubble sitting alone beneath an alien sky. From a distance, it almost looks insignificant. Yet you know the truth. That small habitat is the most important place on the entire planet, because it contains something Mars does not: a breathable atmosphere, warmth, water, food, human life. You step through the airlock once more. The hatch closes. Pressure slowly returns. The helmet comes off. Fresh recycled air fills your lungs, and only then do you fully relax. Because deep down, your body understood something before your mind did. The moment you stepped outside, you entered a world humans were never designed to inhabit. And the moment you stepped back inside, you return to the only place on Mars where being human is still possible. The dream of standing on another planet is real. The wonder is real. The beauty is real. But so is another truth. The surface of Mars is not a place where you live. It is a place where you visit. A place where every second is borrowed, and where every breath is a reminder that this extraordinary world is doing absolutely nothing to help keep you alive. The first few weeks pass in a blur. Everything is new. Everything is fascinating. Even the smallest routines feel historic. You are living on Mars. Those 4 words still carry enormous weight. Every morning you wake up remembering where you are. Every evening you fall asleep knowing that only a tiny number of human beings have ever stood where you stand. The excitement is genuine. And for a while, it is enough. You spend your free moments staring through observation ports. You volunteer for surface excursions whenever possible. You take photographs. You record journal entries. You send messages home describing the strange beauty of the planet. The red horizon, the pale sky, the way distant hills seem frozen in time. Back on Earth, people are fascinated. Friends and family ask questions. News organizations publish updates. For a brief period, you are living humanity's greatest adventure. But something slowly begins to change. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just little by little. The human brain has a remarkable ability. It can normalize almost anything. No matter how extraordinary an experience seems at first, eventually it becomes familiar. And familiar things rarely feel extraordinary for long. After a few months, you stop staring out the window every day. The horizon hasn't changed. The rocks haven't moved. The same hills remain exactly where they were yesterday, and the day before, and the month before that. The landscape that once felt breathtaking begins to feel ordinary. You still appreciate it, but the sense of wonder becomes quieter, more distant. The same thing happens inside the habitat. At first, every room feels exciting. You are living inside humanity's first home on another world. But after enough time, a corridor is just a corridor. A hatch is just a hatch. A workstation is just a workstation. The novelty begins to fade. You start noticing details that never mattered before. The constant hum of ventilation fans, the vibration of pumps moving water through recycling systems, the faint mechanical sounds that never fully disappear. Back on Earth, silence usually means peace. On Mars, silence would be terrifying. Silence would mean something stopped working. So the machines continue humming. Day after day, month after month, year after year. At first, you barely notice them. Later, you realize you hear them constantly. And eventually, they become the soundtrack of your life. You know the rhythm of every system. You recognize certain sounds the way people on Earth recognize familiar songs. A slight change in a fan's pitch catches your attention. A pump sounds different than usual. Without realizing it, you have become deeply tuned to the machine that keeps you alive. Because on Mars, the machine is not part of your environment. The machine is your environment. The days settle into a routine. Wake up, check systems, eat breakfast, work assignments, maintenance tasks, exercise, dinner, sleep, repeat. The schedule is carefully designed. Structure helps people cope with isolation. But structure also creates repetition, and repetition can become exhausting. One morning feels remarkably similar to the next. The same walls, the same lights, the same faces, the same meals, the same responsibilities. Human beings evolved in constantly changing environments. Weather changed, seasons changed, landscapes changed. New people appeared. New experiences emerged. Even a simple walk outside offered something different every day. On Mars, change becomes rare. The habitat stays the same. The crew remains the same. The view remains the same. And the world beyond the walls remains as silent as ever. The realization arrives unexpectedly. Perhaps while eating dinner. Perhaps during a maintenance shift. Perhaps while lying awake at night. You suddenly understand that this is no longer a mission. This is your life. Not a temporary adventure, not a special event, just life. The extraordinary has become ordinary. And that transition is more difficult than many people imagine. Because excitement is easy, routine is harder. Especially when the routine takes place millions of kilometers from home. By the end of your first year, another subtle change occurs. You stop comparing every experience to Earth. In the beginning, that comparison happened constantly. The sky isn't blue. The air isn't natural. The food isn't fresh. The gravity isn't normal. Everything felt different. Now, Mars begins to feel normal. At least partly. Your brain adapts. It always does. You no longer wake up every morning thinking about how strange the planet is. You simply wake up and begin your day. This adaptation is useful, necessary even. But it comes with an unexpected consequence. As Mars feels more familiar, Earth begins to feel more distant. The memory of ordinary things starts to soften. The feeling of rain on your skin, a breeze moving through trees, the smell of grass after a storm, the noise of a crowded street, the sound of birds at sunrise. You remember them. Of course you do. But memory is not the same as experience. And with every passing month, those memories become slightly less vivid, not because you want them to, but because the brain slowly prioritizes the world it currently occupies. Mars becomes your reality. Earth becomes a memory. One evening, after another perfectly ordinary day, you stand beside the observation port before heading to sleep. Outside, the desert stretches endlessly beneath the fading light. Nothing moves, nothing grows, nothing changes. And for the first time, you realize something surprising. The hardest part of living on Mars is not the danger. It is not the radiation. It is not the dust. It is not even the isolation. The hardest part is learning that even the greatest adventure in human history eventually becomes a routine. Because no matter how far humanity travels, no matter how extraordinary the destination may be, The human mind carries the same habit wherever it goes. It turns the impossible into the familiar. By the beginning of your second year on Mars, a strange realization has fully settled into your mind. You no longer think of the habitat as a building. You think of it as an organism. A giant artificial organism made of pumps, filters, pipes, sensors, cables, processors, tanks, and airlocks. An organism that never sleeps. An organism that must remain healthy every second of every day. Because if it dies, you die with it. Back on Earth, survival is mostly invisible. You wake up and breathe without effort. You drink water without wondering where it came from. You turn on a light without thinking about the power station hundreds of miles away. Entire networks work quietly in the background. Most people rarely think about them. Mars changes that. Here, survival is impossible to ignore. Every necessity of life has become visible. Every breath, every sip of water, every meal, every degree of warmth. Everything exists because a machine is creating it. And because someone is maintaining that machine. Often, that someone is you. Your mornings begin with system checks, not because anyone enjoys doing them, but because failing to do them would be reckless. You sit down at a monitoring station and review the habitat's vital signs. Atmospheric pressure, oxygen production, carbon dioxide removal, water recycling efficiency, battery reserves, power generation, temperature control. Dozens of numbers scroll across displays. Most are routine. Sometimes one is not. And even a small deviation deserves attention. Because small problems have a habit of becoming large problems on Mars. On Earth, a broken air conditioner is annoying. On Mars, a failed environmental system can become life-threatening. The difference changes how people think. Nothing is taken for granted. Nothing. Even breathing has become a managed process. The oxygen filling the habitat was not waiting for you outside. Mars did not provide it. Machines created it. Somewhere nearby, systems are separating oxygen from compounds that contain it. Pumps move gases through filters. Sensors monitor concentrations. Computers regulate pressure. Everything works together in a carefully balanced cycle. You rarely see these systems directly. Yet they are always there. Working, humming, supporting every moment of your existence. And because you understand how dependent you are on them, you never completely stop thinking about them. Even while eating breakfast, even while exercising, even while trying to sleep. A small part of your mind always knows that your life depends upon machinery functioning correctly. Water creates a similar awareness. On Earth, water feels abundant. Rivers flow. Rain falls. Reservoirs stretch across landscapes. Most people use water without considering where it came from. Mars teaches a different lesson. Here, every drop matters. Water is collected, filtered, purified, recycled, recovered, then recycled again. The water in your cup today may have passed through the system dozens of times. That fact sounds strange at first. Then it becomes normal. Eventually, it becomes comforting, because recycling is not merely an engineering solution, it is survival. Nothing can be wasted. Not water, not energy, not food, not time. The entire settlement exists inside a closed loop, a fragile circle that must remain unbroken. Food follows the same pattern. Perhaps this is one of the biggest surprises for new arrivals. The meals are not terrible. In fact, they are often better than people expect, but they are repetitive. Extremely repetitive. Certain crops dominate because they are efficient. Potatoes, leafy greens, soy products, grains. Vegetables selected not for luxury, but for practicality. The hydroponic gardens become some of the most important places in the habitat. Not only because they produce food, but because they produce life. Real life, growing life, green leaves, living roots. Tiny reminders of Earth. Many settlers find themselves spending extra time there, not because they are hungry, but because the plants provide something psychological. A connection to the biological world they left behind. You quickly learn that people do not miss restaurants. They miss nature. The plants help, at least a little. Power generation occupies another constant place in daily life. Everything depends on electricity. The lights, the heating systems, the air circulation, the water recyclers, the communication arrays, the food production modules, the environmental controls, the computers monitoring everything else. If electricity disappears, the entire chain begins to collapse. Not instantly, but relentlessly. One system after another, which means power is never far from anyone's mind. Dust accumulation on solar arrays, battery performance, energy consumption, backup reserves. Every settler understands these topics, not because they are engineers, but because life requires them to understand. On Mars, everyone becomes part engineer whether they intended to or not. And perhaps that is the biggest difference between life on Earth and life on Mars. Back home, most people specialize. A teacher teaches. A doctor practices medicine. An artist creates. A mechanic repairs machines. Entire societies allow people to focus on a single role. Mars cannot afford that luxury. Everyone must become many things at once. Part technician, part scientist, part maintenance worker, part emergency responder, part explorer. Every crew member carries responsibilities far beyond a normal profession because there is no one else. No repair company arriving tomorrow. No delivery truck bringing missing equipment. No specialist waiting down the road. The settlement must solve its own problems every time. That reality becomes especially clear during equipment failures. Eventually, something always breaks. A pump begins performing below expectations. A sensor starts reporting inconsistent data. A filtration unit requires replacement. Most issues are small, but they demand attention. Ignoring them is never an option. You begin to understand that maintenance is not a separate activity. Maintenance is the activity. Exploration, science, and discovery happen when time allows. Keeping the habitat alive comes first. Always. Some days this reality feels inspiring. Human ingenuity overcoming impossible odds. Other days it feels exhausting. The work never truly ends. Every system ages. Every component experiences wear. Every seal slowly degrades. Every machine moves one day closer to failure. The habitat is alive, but it is also aging, and everyone inside knows it. Yet despite all this, something remarkable happens. You adapt. By now, Mars feels familiar. You know the layout of the habitat. You know the daily routines. You know the sounds of the machines that keep you alive. In many ways, you have adapted. But Mars has not. The planet remains exactly as it was on the day you arrived. Cold, silent, indifferent. And no matter how comfortable life inside the habitat becomes, the world outside never stops reminding you that you do not belong here. One afternoon, while reviewing routine system reports, an alert appears. Not an emergency. Not yet. A warning. Radiation levels outside have increased. A solar event somewhere on the sun has sent energetic particles racing across the solar system. Back on Earth, most people never think about such things. The planet's magnetic field quietly protects them. The atmosphere absorbs what remains. Life continues without interruption. Mars offers no such protection. The planet lost most of its global magnetic field billions of years ago. Today, very little stands between its surface and the violence of space. For settlers, this means radiation is not something that happens occasionally. It is something that is always happening. Every second, every minute, every day. Most of the time, you cannot feel it. There is no pain, no warning, no visible sign. That is what makes it unsettling. A storm on Earth announces itself. You hear thunder. You see dark clouds. You feel the wind. Radiation arrives silently. The damage accumulates quietly inside cells and tissues while life appears perfectly normal. This is one reason many habitats are buried beneath layers of Martian soil. Not because underground living is desirable, because it is necessary. The thick layer of rock above your head acts as a shield, a protective blanket between you and the constant bombardment arriving from space. And yet, even buried beneath the surface, the awareness never completely disappears. You know the radiation is still there, waiting, persistent, uninterested in whether anyone notices. If radiation is the invisible threat, dust is its opposite. Dust is impossible to ignore. At first glance, Martian dust seems harmless. It looks almost beautiful. Soft red powder stretching across the landscape, the same dust that gives Mars its famous color. The same dust that appears so striking in photographs. But appearances can be deceptive. Every settler learns this quickly. Mars is a world made of dust. Dust covering rocks, dust coating equipment, dust gathering on solar panels, dust drifting across the horizon. Dust finding its way into places it should never be able to reach. The airlock opens. Dust comes in. Equipment returns from an expedition. Dust comes in. A rover arrives from outside. Dust comes in. No matter how careful the crew becomes, tiny particles always find a way. Over time, cleaning becomes one of the most important routines in the habitat. Not because people enjoy cleaning, because the dust never stops. Filters must be checked, surfaces must be wiped down, equipment must be inspected again and again. The process becomes endless, like trying to keep sand out of a house built in the middle of a desert. Except this desert stretches across an entire planet. The settlers eventually develop a strange relationship with the dust. They respect it. Not because it is dramatic, because it is relentless. Many of the greatest dangers on Mars are not dramatic. They are persistent. The planet rarely attacks with a single catastrophic event. Instead, it slowly wears things down. Machines, materials, people, even morale, little by little, day after day. The same pattern appears during dust storms. Back on Earth, storms are often temporary interruptions. Weather arrives, weather passes, life returns to normal. Mars operates on a different scale. A dust storm can grow large enough to cover regions the size of countries, sometimes larger. Occasionally, storms spread across nearly the entire planet. Imagine standing near the observation port during one of these events. The distant landscape begins to fade. The horizon disappears. The sky grows darker. Not because night has arrived, because the atmosphere itself has become filled with suspended dust. Days pass, then more days. The storm remains. The habitat continues operating. The lights remain on. The systems continue running. But everyone becomes more aware of their dependence on technology. Power production falls. Equipment works harder. Maintenance requirements increase. Nothing has failed. Yet the crew can feel the pressure. Mars is reminding them once again that survival here is conditional. The planet is not actively trying to kill them, but neither is it helping. And perhaps that distinction matters. Earth helps, Earth provides, Earth supports life naturally. Mars does none of those things. Everything useful must be extracted, created, maintained, protected. The settlers begin to understand this more deeply with every passing year. The habitat is not a colony standing triumphantly on another world. It is a tiny pocket of Earth carried across space. A fragile bubble surrounded by an environment that remains fundamentally alien. Outside, the desert waits. Inside, life continues. The contrast becomes impossible to ignore. One side of the wall contains warmth, water, food, light, and human voices. The other side contains cold rock, thin air, and billions of years of silence. The difference between those two worlds is measured in inches. A wall, a suit, a pressure seal, a filter, a machine. Such ordinary things. And yet they separate survival from extinction. Eventually, as another Martian evening settles over the settlement, you find yourself looking out across the darkening landscape once again. For a long time, the changes are easy to ignore. You still wake up every morning. You still complete your work. You still exercise. You still move through the habitat with the same routines that have defined your life for years. From the outside, nothing appears different, but Mars has been changing you since the day you arrived. Patiently, one small adjustment at a time. Unlike radiation or dust, these changes do not come from the environment around you. They come from the environment beneath your feet, or, more accurately, the lack of it. On Earth, gravity is one of the few things people rarely think about. It is constant, invisible, reliable. Every bone in your body was built under its influence. Every muscle evolved to work against it. Every organ learned to function within it. For your entire life, gravity shaped what it meant to be human. Then you came to Mars, and suddenly gravity became weaker, not absent, just weaker. Only about 38% as strong as the force your body spent millions of years adapting to. At first, this feels wonderful. You feel lighter. Moving equipment is easier. Heavy objects seem surprisingly manageable. Walking requires less effort. Many settlers enjoy it. Some even love it. But over time, the advantages begin to reveal a hidden cost. The human body is remarkably efficient. If a muscle is no longer needed, the body reduces it. If a bone experiences less stress, the body strengthens it less. Why spend energy maintaining structures that are no longer necessary? From a biological perspective, it makes perfect sense. From a human perspective, it can be unsettling. Months pass, then years. Your daily exercise routines become more important than ever. Every settler exercises not for fitness, for survival. Treadmills, resistance machines, strength training systems. What once felt optional now feels mandatory. Miss enough sessions, and your body notices. The muscles in your legs gradually weaken, your lower back changes, your endurance declines. The process is slow enough that you rarely notice it happening day to day. But compare yourself to the person who first stepped onto Mars years ago. The difference becomes impossible to ignore. The same story unfolds inside your skeleton. Bones are living structures. They constantly rebuild themselves. On Earth, gravity provides a continuous reminder that strong bones are useful. Mars whispers a different message. The reduced load means your body receives fewer signals to maintain the same density. And so, little by little, the architecture of your skeleton begins to change. Not enough to stop you from living your life, but enough to make you wonder, what would happen if you went home? It is a question many settlers avoid, not because they do not care, because the answer is uncertain. Imagine returning to Earth after spending years under Martian gravity. The world you left behind would suddenly feel much heavier. Standing would require more effort. Walking would feel unfamiliar. Even lifting your own body weight might become exhausting. The planet that once felt normal could begin to feel overwhelming. For some settlers, this possibility becomes deeply personal. The longer they stay, the more Mars shapes them, and the more Mars shapes them, the harder leaving may become. Eventually, another realization emerges. You are not simply living on Mars. Mars is living inside you. The planet is changing your biology, your muscles, your bones, your circulation, perhaps even parts of your nervous system. Transformation is gradual, but it is real, and it raises a question nobody can fully answer. What happens after decades? No one knows. Human beings have never spent decades living under Martian gravity. There are studies, there are simulations, there are educated guesses, but there are no actual examples. Every long-term settler becomes part of an experiment that has never been performed before. The uncertainty extends beyond adults. One evening, during a conversation over dinner, someone raises a subject that rarely appears in public discussions back on Earth: children. The room becomes quiet. Because everyone understands the significance of the question. What would happen if a child were born on Mars? No one knows. Not completely. No human child has ever developed in a world with 38% of Earth's gravity. No one knows how bones would grow. No one knows how muscles would adapt. No one knows whether a person born on Mars could comfortably live on Earth later in life. The possibility is both exciting and unsettling. A child born here might become something humanity has never seen before. The first true Martian human, not an Earth visitor temporarily living on Mars. A person whose entire life was shaped by another world. A person who may never feel completely at home on Earth. The idea lingers in your mind long after the conversation ends, because it forces you to confront something profound. The first settlers came here believing they were bringing Earth to Mars. Air, water, food, technology, culture, all transported across space. But perhaps the opposite is also happening. Perhaps Mars is slowly creating its own version of humanity, not through intention, not through design, simply through the quiet influence of its environment. The years continue passing. Your reflection changes, not dramatically, not all at once, but enough that you notice. You move differently. You think differently. You have adapted to a world that most humans will never experience. And somewhere along the way, a subtle shift has occurred. You stop thinking of yourself as a visitor. Visitors eventually leave. You are no longer certain that you will. The thought arrives unexpectedly one night while looking through the observation port. Outside, the familiar desert stretches beneath the stars, the same horizon, the same silence, the same ancient landscape. And suddenly you realize that Mars is no longer the strange world you came to explore. It is becoming the world that shaped you, the place where your body changed, the place where your routines formed, the place where years of your life unfolded, the place where part of you now belongs. Perhaps that is the strangest thing about living on Mars. Not the danger, not the technology, not the isolation, but the realization that the longer you stay, the less you resemble the person who arrived, and the more you resemble someone created by this distant red world. A version of you. At first you think the hardest part of living on Mars will be the danger, the radiation, the dust, the equipment failures, the endless maintenance, the fragile systems keeping everyone alive. Those challenges are certainly real, but after enough years, another challenge slowly rises above all the others. A challenge no engineer can solve with better materials. No scientist can eliminate with a breakthrough. No machine can fully repair. Loneliness, not ordinary loneliness. Not the kind that comes from spending a weekend by yourself. Not even the loneliness of moving to a distant city where you know nobody. This is something deeper. A loneliness measured not in miles, but in planets. When you first arrived, communication with Earth felt exciting. Friends sent messages. Family recorded videos, schools asked questions, journalists wanted interviews. Every transmission felt important. A connection stretching across millions of kilometers. A reminder that humanity was still out there, watching, listening, waiting. In the early years, those messages become part of your routine. You record updates, you tell stories, you describe the strange realities of life on Mars, the red sunsets, the habitat, the endless maintenance, the first dust storms, the first birthdays celebrated on another world. People on Earth respond with fascination. For a while, the connection feels strong. But time changes things. It always does. Years pass. Life continues. Not only on Mars, on Earth as well. Friends get married, children grow up. Cities change, governments change. New technologies appear. Entire cultural trends come and go, and you witness all of it from a distance, like someone watching life through a window. A very distant window. The delay in communication never stops feeling strange. Every conversation exists in fragments. You send a message, you wait. A reply arrives much later. You respond, you wait again. The rhythm of natural conversation disappears. There is no laughing together in real time. No spontaneous discussions. No late-night phone calls. No sitting with family around a table. The emotional immediacy that humans evolved with is gone. Relationships survive, but they change, inevitably. One evening, you receive a video from Earth. A simple recording, nothing extraordinary, just a walk through a park, children playing, dogs running across grass. Trees moving gently in the wind, people talking in the distance. You watch the video several times, then several more. Not because anything important happens, because everything important happens. The grass, the sky, the movement of leaves, the sound of birds, the ordinary world you once ignored. You realize something surprising. You do not miss grand adventures. You miss ordinary things, the things you never appreciated when they were everywhere. A cool breeze against your face, rain tapping against a window, the smell of soil after a storm, clouds drifting overhead, the sound of distant traffic, a crowded restaurant, a beach, a forest trail. Even bad weather, especially bad weather, because weather is a reminder that the world is alive. Mars has weather, but it is not alive. It does not feel alive. The storms carry dust instead of rain. The sky remains muted. The landscape remains unchanged. Year after year, the same horizon, the same colors, the same silence. Humans evolved surrounded by complexity, millions of plants, millions of animals, changing seasons, changing temperatures, changing sounds. The Earth constantly surprises you. Mars rarely does, and eventually, your mind begins craving what it once took for granted. Many settlers develop small rituals. One person watches recordings of forests every evening. Another listens to ocean sounds before sleeping. Someone else grows flowers inside a tiny corner of the hydroponics bay. Not because flowers are useful, because they are beautiful. And beauty becomes increasingly valuable on Mars. The habitat itself remains small. The same rooms, the same hallways, the same faces. At first, the crew feels like a team. Later, they feel like family. And eventually, something even stranger. They become your entire social universe. Every celebration, every disagreement, every conversation, every friendship, every frustration. The same handful of people, year after year. There is nowhere else to go. No new neighborhood, no weekend trip, no chance encounter with a stranger, no crowded street filled with possibilities. Every door leads to another room inside the same machine. The same machine that has protected you for years. The same machine that sometimes feels more like a world than the planet outside. And that realization can be unsettling, because humans were never meant to live in worlds this small. Some nights, the loneliness arrives quietly. You stand by the observation port and look toward the sky. Earth is there somewhere, a small point of light, almost impossible to distinguish from the countless stars surrounding it. You know that billions of people are living their lives on that distant world, eating dinner, walking home, watching sunsets, hugging loved ones, breathing fresh air, and yet they feel unimaginably far away. For the first time, you truly understand the scale of the solar system. Not in kilometers, not in scientific measurements, in human terms. Distance is no longer a number. Distance is missing birthdays, missing weddings, missing funerals, missing years that can never be recovered. The people you love continue aging. So do you. But you are aging in different worlds, living different realities, becoming different people. And over time, something unexpected happens. The loneliness does not disappear, but it changes shape. You stop fighting it. You stop wishing every day that things were different. Instead, you begin carrying it with you, the way sailors once carried the loneliness of the sea, the way explorers carried the loneliness of distant frontiers. It becomes part of who you are, part of life, part of Mars. One evening, many years after your arrival, you sit quietly inside the hydroponics module. The lights glow softly above rows of green plants. A faint scent of vegetation fills the air, perhaps the closest thing to nature anywhere on the planet. You close your eyes for a moment, and something remarkable happens. You can almost imagine Earth, not perfectly, not completely, but enough. The memory returns, the feeling of standing beneath an open sky, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of wind moving through trees, and for a brief moment, the distance feels smaller. Then you open your eyes, the habitat returns, the machines return, Mars returns, and yet something has changed. You realize that home is no longer a single place. Part of your heart still belongs to Earth. It always will. But another part now belongs here, to this strange red world, to the people who shared it with you, to the years you spent surviving beneath its silent skies. The loneliness never completely leaves. Perhaps it never can, but neither does the meaning, because every person who chooses to live on Mars accepts a trade. They exchange the richness of Earth for something few humans have ever experienced. After everything you've experienced, a question remains. A simple question. Perhaps the most important question of all. Would it still be worth it? Would you still choose Mars? You think back to the person who first arrived here many years ago. The person standing nervously inside the airlock before that first excursion. The person staring across the red horizon with excitement and wonder. That version of you knew Mars would be difficult. Everyone knew that. The dangers were never a secret. The radiation, the isolation, the dust, the machinery, the uncertainty. But knowing something intellectually is very different from living it. Now you understand. You know what it feels like to wake up inside a habitat buried beneath layers of rock. You know what it feels like to depend on machines for every breath. You know what it feels like to watch Earth shrink into a distant point of light. You know what it feels like to miss the smell of rain, to miss trees, to miss ordinary afternoons that once seemed forgettable. You know what it feels like to become a stranger to the world you came from. And yet, despite all of that, the answer is not as obvious as people on Earth might expect, because Mars has changed you in ways that are difficult to explain. There are moments when you walk through the habitat and remember that every person here helped build something humanity once believed impossible. There are moments when you stand beneath the Martian sky and realize that no human being in all of history had ever seen this exact view before you. There are moments when you look out across the ancient desert and feel the overwhelming privilege of witnessing another world with your own eyes. No photograph can fully capture it. No documentary can recreate it. No simulation can replace it. You are here, actually here, living where generations only dreamed of going. The thought still carries power. Even after all these years, perhaps that is what makes humans so unusual. We have never been entirely rational when it comes to exploration. If we were, many of history's greatest journeys would never have happened. People crossed oceans in fragile wooden ships. They ventured into deserts where maps ended. They climbed mountains that offered no reward except a view. They sailed toward horizons knowing they might never return, not because the journeys were safe, because curiosity was stronger than caution. Something deep inside our species seems drawn toward the unknown. The unknown has always called to us. And Mars may simply be the newest version of that call. You think about the first sailors who crossed vast oceans. Many never returned home. Some died. Others reached places nobody believed existed. Yet generation after generation continued following them. Not because exploration became easier, because exploration became part of who we are. The same story unfolded in the Arctic, in Antarctica, in the skies, and eventually in space. Every frontier looked impossible before someone arrived there. Every frontier demanded sacrifices. Every frontier changed the people who crossed it. Mars is no different. The sacrifices are simply larger. The distance is greater. The risks are higher. The loneliness is deeper. But the instinct remains the same. Human beings want to know what lies beyond the horizon. Even when the horizon belongs to another planet, you glance around the habitat, the familiar walls, the familiar lights, the familiar sounds of machines quietly working in the background. This place once felt temporary. Now it feels permanent. Not because it is perfect, because it became yours. Home is a strange thing. Most people think home is a location, a city, a country, a house. But over time you discover that home is often something else entirely. Home is where your memories live. Home is where your routines take shape. Home is where the people you care about exist. By that definition, Mars has become a home. An unusual home, a difficult home, perhaps even a harsh home. But a home nonetheless. And that realization surprises you more than anything else. Because when you first arrived, you thought survival would be the challenge. You thought the battle would be against the planet, against the cold, against the radiation, against the endless engineering problems. Instead, the greatest challenge was learning how to belong somewhere that was never meant for you. Learning how to build meaning inside an environment that offered none naturally. Learning how to create a life where life had never existed before. That achievement feels larger than any piece of technology. Larger than any habitat. Larger than any spacecraft. It feels deeply human. Outside, evening settles across the Martian landscape. The sky darkens slowly. The desert stretches toward the horizon exactly as it has for billions of years. Silent, ancient, unchanged. Long before the first human arrived, Mars watched stars rise above its deserts. Long after the last human eventually leaves, it may continue doing the same. The planet itself does not care whether anyone stays. It never asked for visitors. It never invited settlers. It simply exists. And perhaps that is why the story matters. Because the meaning was never in Mars. The meaning was always in us. In our willingness to leave safety behind. In our willingness to cross impossible distances. In our willingness to carry a small piece of Earth into places where Earth was never meant to be. One final thought crosses your mind before you leave the observation port. If someone offered you the chance to return to the beginning, to stand once again on Earth, to choose whether or not to board the spacecraft, to choose whether or not to leave everything behind, knowing everything you know now, knowing every hardship, every lonely night, every difficult year, every sacrifice, would you still go? You stand quietly for a moment, looking across the endless red horizon, and somewhere deep inside, an answer emerges. Not because Mars became easier, not because the risks disappeared, not because the loneliness vanished, but because some journeys are valuable precisely because they are difficult. Some destinations matter because they change us. And no place in the solar system changes a person quite like Mars. Outside, the stars begin appearing one by one above the darkening desert. Inside, the habitat glows softly with artificial light. The machines continue humming. The settlers continue living. And now, as our journey across Mars comes to an end, allow yourself to imagine one final scene. The habitat has grown quiet. Most of the crew have already gone to sleep. The day's maintenance is finished. The system checks are complete. The hydroponic gardens glow softly behind closed doors. The air recyclers continue their endless work. The pumps continue moving water through hidden pipes. The familiar hum of machinery fills the habitat like a distant lullaby. Outside, the Martian night stretches across the desert. Cold, silent, ancient. The same silence that existed long before the first human arrived. The same silence that will remain long after every footprint has faded back into dust. Above the horizon, countless stars shine with unusual clarity. Without a thick atmosphere to blur their light, the heavens seem almost impossibly bright. Among those stars is one tiny point of light, Earth. A distant world wrapped in oceans, clouds, forests, rivers, and life. A world where rain still falls, where trees still sway in the wind, where people walk beneath open skies without ever thinking about the miracle of breathable air. From Mars, Earth looks small. But perhaps distance has a way of revealing value. Sometimes we only understand what a thing means once we are far away from it. Perhaps that is one of the lessons Mars teaches best. Not simply how difficult survival can be, but how extraordinary our home planet truly is. Tonight, somewhere beneath those distant earthly skies, billions of people are sleeping. And here on Mars, inside a fragile bubble of warmth and light, a handful of settlers are doing the same, separated by millions of kilometers. connected by the same stars, the same curiosity, the same desire to explore what lies beyond the horizon. For now, the machines continue humming. The habitat continues breathing. And the red planet continues waiting beneath an endless sea of stars. So let your thoughts drift gently into the darkness. Leave behind the dust storms, the maintenance logs, the radiation warnings, the long distances, the difficult questions, and simply imagine the quiet. A lonely habitat glowing softly beneath an alien sky. A tiny island of life surrounded by a vast red desert. And above it all, the stars. Endless, silent, watching over both worlds. Good night. And wherever you are tonight, whether beneath the skies of Earth or only in imagination beneath the skies of Mars, may your dreams carry you gently among the stars.